Hello, everybody. It's Heather here.
And it's Deb. Hello. Here we
Today,
are.
yep. This is episode 7 of Reluctantly Healing. Reluctantly woo-woo.
Reluctantly woo-woo.
Today we're talking about reluctantly healing. So why reluctantly woo-woo first, Deb?
Yeah. So as we've said in all our past episodes, if you guys are new to us, we'll give you a little background about why we call this reluctantly woo-woo, and start with our definition of woo-woo. So those are all those things that seem pretty unbelievable. They defy the logical mind, but guess what? They work. So reluctantly, you have to admit that they work. And we know that there are a lot more people like us out there that have maybe thought about these things, but we're a little reluctant to buy into them. And so we started this podcast to continue that conversation, introduce y'all to some of these concepts, and hopefully bring your reluctance down just a little bit. And so we've been talking over the past few episodes about healing. So we've given some background. And now we're going to talk about the how. So this should be a good one. So you might be ready if you're leading up to this conversation and have been with us for a bit. You're ready to get into the nitty gritty and try to move forward. So how do we do that?
Yes.
What do you think, Heather?
Well, let's just, because I know I always forget everything, so I was going to do a quick review of what healing is.
Mm-hmm.
And healing is integrating parts of ourselves and resolving past traumas so that there's no emotional charge. So you can think about that thing that happened when you were a child or a teenager or an adult. And when you think about it, you don't feel your body going into a spin about it. Okay? You just it has as much emotional charge as the gas that you passed yesterday. It just has no, you're just like, oh, that's just a thing. I mean, it doesn't have any control, or I know I always use gas or sex things. Oh,
right. When your feelings become farts, you're healing.
Right. Yes. I love that. We're going to have to make that a quote.
Exactly.
But it's true, because those things that have so much to do with, they're just great metaphors. And I will claim that I can be immature in that way, but they really are great metaphors. So when those memories have no control or impact over your thoughts or feelings and emotions. Okay. And so we talked about what are the mindsets for healing. These are things that you need to be thinking and believing in order to heal. So your favorite, number one, I know it's my favorite, but I know what's the number one thing?
Number one, take responsibility for everything in your life. Foundation for really getting anything you want in life. Own it. That's it. Take responsibility for the good, the bad, and everything in between.
And this is one of the hardest ones for everybody, right? Because it's but they did this to me. He cheated on me. They screwed me over. My parents did this to me. And it's really challenging to say, wait a minute, in what ways did I do that to myself?
Mm-hmm.
And that is the first step, towards creating an environment for healing. And the second part is just allowing the possibility that it could be safe, right? Not saying that everything is perfect and great, but just saying, okay, I'm going to allow space for myself to explore healing. That's it.
Right.
Just start to allow things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then the third part, you remember that one?
Yes. Let it be a journey. So understanding that this is not an overnight process. It's going to take time. It's going to have some weaves along the path. So it won't look like a straight point A to point B, and it won't be quick. So be okay with how it unfolds in front of you, and always trust the process that eventually you will start to see the payoff.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And the next one is to be willing to let go of all the things that are causing you to be unwell. Again, another thing that's really challenging is most people are like, I want everything in my world to stay the same. I just want to change and be different. Mm-hmm. I want to keep doing the same actions that I'm doing. I want to keep the same relationships that I have. I want to keep the same physical habits, but I want to feel different.
Yeah. Isn't that the definition of crazy, right? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That I think leads to that last one, right? So you have to connect with your true self. And that's probably another one that we talked last time about, how that feels a little esoteric. People don't really understand how that one works. So I think that is one that takes time to understand and feel. And that, again, all of these things we've said leading up to this, it is a process. So connecting back to your true self is not something that's going to happen overnight, but learning to really listen and go inward and feel. There, we all have an internal guidance system, so it's challenging to find it, but that's definitely part of the healing process.
Yeah. So now we're going to dive into the how part, and I want to like put an umbrella over this big how part with my favorite questions. Is when people come and, to me for coaching and energy healing, their question is always, how do I, do this? And in order, to do the hows, we have to first ask the question, who do I need to be, right, to do this thing, right? Because the hows are a small part of it. Right. But we have to ask yourself, who do I need to be? And all those mindset things that we just said, those are all the who you need to be able to dive into the how part. Right. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you said it perfectly. I always love that concept of identifying, who you are, and being able to visualize who that person is and how that person looks different from who you might be today, because you need that clear picture in order to develop the path.
Yeah. So the how part. So this is something that a lot of people don't talk about when you go to any type of healing, whether it's therapy or coaching or energy work or, conventional things, going to a doctor. Right? Typically, at least in my experience, and if you had different experience, then please, let us know. But it's been like, oh, you just need to do this one thing. Right? You just need to get this energy healing or go to this coach, and do these mantras, do this one thing. And that's all a bunch of BS, because it's never just one thing. There's no one magic bullet that's going to heal every single thing. And so what the how, right, of creating healing is to explore the 5 bodies and ask what's needed in each of these areas to heal. Okay. And this is where the reluctant part comes in, is what are the things that I've never done before? Because the reason why you're coming, going to someone and looking for healing is because all the things that you've done before haven't quite worked. Right. So again, we have to be willing to do something different. But you have to look at the 5 different bodies. And I'm sure if you're watching this or listening, you might be like, what 5 bodies? What are you talking about? So should we go through them first and then share our some stories about it?
Yeah, I mean, maybe let's give what are those 5, and then we'll break each one down, because it is definitely a little bit of a mind bender at first when you're like, I got one body, I'm not sure.
Right. Okay. So we have 5 different bodies as a human. We have our physical body, right? The thing that you see. And that's, everybody understands that, but that's the one that we live in, our skin, our bones, and everything else, right? And then we have our emotional body, right? This is the body that we feel in. This is the level that we experience and store emotions, are happy or sad or guilty, fearful, all of those emotions, right? That's our emotional body. We have our energetic body. And this is the body of subtle energy flows. If you think along the lines of meridians and energy centers, most people, I think at this day and age, something like acupuncture is decently mainstream now, right? Acupuncture goes in and it shifts the energy highways essentially in the body, right? That's our energetic body. That's what people are referring to when you hear all these crazy woo-woo people talking about oh, my energy field, right? That's what they're talking about, right? And the energy body is the thing that you can't really see, but you can feel. If somebody walks into a room before they even say anything, you're like, ooh, crap. Yeah. Don't like that person, right? Or oh, I want to jump that person's bones because I really like their energy, right? So that's our energetic body. our mental body is your mind. It's what you think, what you believe, what you value, how you perceive yourself in the world. It's where you have the ability to memorize information, where you create mental stories, which we do all the time, right? Where we set goals, where we think about how to get things done. Goals, that's a word I really hate in my vocabulary, but that's a whole other podcast. But that's like, your thinking brain. And then we have, lastly, our spiritual body, right? This is our soul, our connection to our higher power, whatever that is for you, right? So we have our physical, our emotional, we have our energetic, we have our mental, and our spiritual bodies, okay? And so when we want to create healing in our world, we have to look at all 5 of those together. If we're just looking at one area, we're not going to be able to move the needle, so to speak, the way that we want to. Okay?
Right.
So let's, do you want to talk about the physical body? And what are some things that we do for the physical body?
Yeah. I mean, I think this one is probably the one that most people would think of first, right? Seems obvious. We know that food can heal us and that what we eat has a huge impact. I think some of us are a bit more aware of that than others. It is a good foundation to start there, right? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A lot of times people don't realize how much a certain food is going to impact their mood. I think a lot of us can think, I eat a food, ooh, I got a stomach ache, maybe that's not a good food. But sometimes you might not feel the physical expression of a food that doesn't agree with you, but you might feel some emotional expressions of that, or a little cognitive fatigue if you don't eat, the right foods, depending on what your load is coming up in the day. I think you probably can speak to this even a little more, because I know you've had some personal experiences discovering what your physical triggers were and how they expressed in emotional ways, right?
Yeah, I am such a big advocate when it comes to creating healing, to look at what you're eating. And like Deb said, a lot of people don't pay attention to this at all. And I definitely never did. It's like, I'm depressed. Like, it's not because of what I'm eating, until I did a 1-week challenge to myself, because I was literally at a place where I was going to kill myself. And I was like, okay, like, don't eat sugar for a week, see how you feel. And if you still feel this way, then go ahead and kill yourself. Because at that point I was like, what's 1 more week? No, it sounds terrible. Right?
It's not funny, but it kind of is.
But that literally is like the deal that I made myself, right? And it was Christmas time, and I was like, okay, I'm just not going to eat sugar. For the sugar addict that I was, like, that was a very big deal. And so as I went throughout the week and didn't have sugar, it was like, I could feel, it was like almost like this fog was just like rising and rising and rising. And I was like, oh my gosh, this depression, because I always knew, like, my mom's a nurse, and she's very much into alternative stuff. Like, she's been always an outside of the box thinker when it comes to medicine, even though she's been in Western medicine. But even she had said to me at one point, she's like, well, Heather, maybe you need to take a little bit of Prozac. And I'm like, I am not depressed because I'm lacking in Prozac. Like, that can't be the case, right?
Right.
Like, there's something else that I'm doing that's creating this. And, food is such, like, I wish I could be like, oh, well, it's just me. No, like, I don't know a single person that when they eliminate sugar from their world, that doesn't say, I have so much more energy, my moods are more stable, right?
Yeah, that was a huge one. And honestly, a lot of other nutrients we might be able to argue provide some value, very little value provided by added sugars in our diet, right?
Yeah. There's a really great film. It's called That Sugar Film. It's a terrible name, but it is such a great documentary on how sugar impacts. And this is a guy who got started eating clean because of his girlfriend, which, a lot of guys will change their diets because of who they're with, right? And then he wanted to do an experiment, see how sugar impacted his body. He got all these tests done, seeing all of his numbers using science, right? And then, like, ate sugar, and just, like, quote unquote healthy sugars, right, for 60 days. He did, in the process, start to eat some just, like, cane sugar, and like pouring it on the stuff. Like, he'd take, like, if a box of whatever said it had X amount of sugar, he would just pour that onto, like, a piece of chicken or something. And you can see what it did. Yeah. Dead's face is like, oh, but you can see, like, what it did to his body physically and emotionally and energetically. So sugar is a big one that impacts our moods. And gluten is another big one. It's a hormone disruptor because it's sprayed with pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, chemicals that are all hormone disruptors. And basically anything that's processed, right, is going to impact your emotional, energetic state. Right? Because everything is energy. And so the easiest thing to think about food is like, if this is living, right, then it's going to put life in me. If it's dead, probably not so much, right? But a really easy book to read about food stuff is Food Rules by Michael Pollan. There's another great book called Food, What the Heck Should I Eat by Mark Hyman. Again, it's Food Rules by Michael Pollan or Food, What the Heck Should I Eat by Mark Hyman. But the very easy rule is, like, if it comes from the earth, eat it. If it doesn't, if it comes in a box and it has a ton of ingredients on it, not so much.
Right. There's also a lot you can look up on how colors impact us in that way too. But I would say, to keep it simple for most people, if this is, okay, we don't want to read a book. Okay, I know the sugar thing. Just keep a food diary for a few days and then monitor how you feel physically, how you feel emotionally, how tired you were. Just kind of keep a little journal and take note of those things, and then experiment with, if I cut this out. I know for me, alcohol is a big one too. It sneaks up on me, and I've gone back and forth with completely eliminating it, and then sometimes I might want to go out and have a couple drinks, and the more that I experiment with that, the less I enjoy what alcohol does for me. Because if you really tune into your little experiment of one person, is it worth it? What's the payoff of, that moment of something sweet? Or the other one we talked about a little bit last week is dairy. How does that sit with you? Regardless of your ethical choices, whatever it is, but tune into how these things sit with you. I love the colors, and I don't know a book off the top of my head to recommend, but you could easily find, just Google some stuff about how the different colors can affect your mood. I know personally, I just go with intuition on that, but sometimes if I'm feeling a little bit like, oh God, I've been a little bit, low and sluggish, I try to eat a lot of like orange and red foods because they feel uplifting to me. And I don't know, could be psychosomatic. Don't really care because it works.
it's totally true. There's a movie called Emotion 2.0, right? They talk about that in there. And it's when you think about like energy of stuff, again, this is where my reluctance comes in. I'm like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but like all food has energy. So you think about trees, right? And fruits that grow on trees, they're growing up, right? They give you more expansive energy. Think fruits, those natures, they're all grown in the summertime when you need more liquid in you, you need more hydration, right? But then in the wintertime, you have more things that grow down and in the earth, they're more grounding. Right? And so it is so like intuitive and logical, except we're so disconnected from intuitive and logical.
And when you tune into your food that way, it does become kind of fun. I don't know. It's a different experience of eating. And I think we probably are oversimplifying it because this is something you and I are and have been doing, right? So if there's anybody watching us, it's like, screw you guys, this is stupid. I would encourage you, just play around with it. There's just be easy on yourself, do some experiments. We're not telling you you're wrong if you want to have a cookie or eat at McDonald's, but just try it.
Right. This is my food diary from back in 2005. And I still keep it because I love to look at it and think about how much I was like, no, I'm so right about this, and I look at, what I writing, like I was very hungry, low blood sugar, I was angry, I was tired, and I'm like, no, these things don't bother me. Oh man.
You know what? And I think that gave me an idea to issue a challenge of see what you can be wrong about, because it's kind of fun, right? In that context, when you're like, no, it's not sugar. It can't be. But when you discovered you were wrong about that, you won something big.
Oh my gosh. Not only I did, but the world did. And I know that sounds cocky, right? But if I had killed myself, like all the things that I've done in the past, like almost 15 years. Well, yeah, like 15 years, like there have been some things that really impacted a lot of people, and not, again, not in a cocky way, but because of making that one decision,
Right.
right? Like, yes, for sure. And so
Yeah.
that, like, taking food and looking at food as like, in what way can I use food to heal me instead of harm me, right, is
Yes.
monstrous, right?
Yes.
Because you cannot be trying to create a positive mindset when you're putting, like, fuel on the fire, so to speak.
Yes. Yes. And I will kind of piggyback on that too with as far as the sugar and the foods that we all know darn well aren't good for us. And then we eat them and then we shame ourselves. And I mean, then you're piling more garbage on top of the garbage that you've already put in your body. So I think we could do a whole episode about this.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
We'll
And we
be
can
able
move
to
on to the movement
Yeah.
piece of the physical body too, because that part I think is another thing I will super nerd out about, which
Yes.
maybe will be its own standalone episode as well. But as far as getting movement into my day, it is something I do, yes, because I like to be fit, and yes, I'm a little bit vain, I suppose, but it has
I'm
become
a
for
lot
me.
vain. I have no problem saying I'm a lot vain.
Right. Well, we all want to
Like,
look good, right?
right.
But for me, it has become something, and it's a huge mindset shift. But it's something that I do to make myself ready for the day, so that all this brain power that I need to put out throughout the day, all the ways that I need to control my emotions in a positive way, that I want to be the person that's, that when I walk in the room, people aren't like, oh, good Lord. Like, I want to be the person
Right.
that people are happy to see, right? Movement is a piece of that for me. So I wake up freaking well before the sun every day, and I get my workout in at 5 a.m., which I do love it. It's not like I'm like, oh God, I hate that I have to wake up that early. I actually love it. Maybe I had to grow to love it. Maybe I don't, I know, again, I don't want to create this idea when I'm saying it to people. It's so easy. And for some people, it's not that easy. But if you can think of it as something that you're doing to nurture your body, to prepare you for your day, not necessarily something you're doing to fit into the jeans you wore pre freaking lockdown or whatever it is, then it shifts how you think about it, and it shifts the way that you can heal, right? Because you're doing something that's just good for your body and your spirit.
And yeah, and I can't speak for you, but I know for me, I couldn't sit here and tell you all the science of like what hormones and endorphins like get released when you're working out, but they do, right? And it just allows you to process your day so much easier when, and from an energy standpoint too, it's like when you have movement, right? Things aren't stagnant, because the opposite of movement is stagnant. And when you're stagnant, right, it's easy for us to just stay ruminating in all of like the things that everybody did to us, and the way that we're hurt, right? But when you're moving, like there's so much science to prove that when you're moving, right, it literally increases your mood and it shifts and changes who you are. It is so good for everybody's mental health. I texted one of my friends this morning because since this whole thing has happened, that I'm an aerialist, and my aerial studio is obviously closed. And so my workouts have stopped. And so for the first month or so, I was doing yoga every day. And then I don't know why I just stopped. And I was just like, I was feeling miserable. And I was like, forget it. Like, this is not who I am. And so I signed up with Beachbody and I started doing this bar blend, and I'm on week 4. And I texted my friend today. I'm like, I never thought I'd say how much I love working out, because I typically in the past, like, I don't enjoy working out. But I found workouts that work for me. Like they're not high cardio, because that just doesn't work for me. Right. It's just the right blend for me. And I'm like, man, I get to get up. I get to get up and move my body.
It's another mindset shift. And I would say also, number one, add this to the same journal. If you're going to journal things and see what's working for you and what's not, put that in there and see how you feel. But whatever movement works for you. I like that idea, right? Because I love yoga. I enjoy cardio. I kind of like it all, but there are things I don't enjoy. I'm not going to do them if they're not fun. So pick something that's actually fun for you. It doesn't matter how many calories it burns. It doesn't matter. Don't think of it that way. Think of it as, if this is something that's fun and this is something that nourishes you on all levels, and we'll get to the other body part, the other, what do we call them? what did you call them?
Yeah,
The five
bodies, right.
the bodies.
It's just
Yeah.
the five
Okay. The
bodies,
other
yeah.
body parts.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, if just pick movement that nourishes you, whatever it is. And it could be, a very slow flow yoga class. It could be running. It could be, I mean, there's no right or wrong. You figure out what works for you.
And there's no, like, I was talking to my mom the other day. My mom just turned 70 yesterday. Happy birthday, Mom. But we were talking, I was saying about, I got this Beachbody thing, and she's like, Heather, she's like, you can just go on YouTube and find anything, she's like, just going on YouTube and finding things, right? And, I say, oh, she's 70. And it's like, some people like, oh, that sounds so old, but like, she's not. Like, my parents, pickleball. They are crazy for pickleball.
That's huge here in Arizona now, too.
It's huge in so many places. I know.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to have to start doing it just because I don't know when Ariel's going to start again. But so finding something that works for you, movement.
Yeah.
So we have two more things under the physical body. We'll run through these kind of fast, but another one is just having a home environment that feels good for you, right? When you're wanting to heal, like emotionally, and even, physically, like if your environment feels gross to you, right? Your body's going to feel contractive. When your body is contractive, it doesn't have space to heal. So you want to, whatever works for you, same as movement, right? If a lot of light feels good for you, then create a lot of light. If darkness feels good for you, create that. If you like having a lot of stuff around you, get a lot of stuff around you. If you like to get, have like nothing around you and you want to Marie Kondo your place, right? But whatever feels good, to have an environment that you feel like, I have space to exhale here. Right?
Yeah.
So, and the last one is, and again, there's so many other things that you can look at within the physical body. We're just giving you a rundown of some things, like overall things, and like no matter what you're doing when it comes to healing, that these are things that are like musts. But there is what's called thymus tapping. So your thymus is over your heart in the upper part of your chest, and it's behind your breastbone. And that your thymus is responsible for making T cells, which is the vital healthy functions of your immune system. Your thymus has everything to do with your immune system, which everybody really needs right now, because your immune system starts with your physical body. Doesn't start with putting something over your face. It starts with your physical body first. And I'm not saying not to put something over your face. I'm just saying that it starts with your physical body, right? And so tapping on your thymus, and make my voice sound funny, right? But if you're feeling like an energy surge of anxiety or depression or overwhelm, right? Just tapping right here is something that you can do just to help calm you down. And we'll talk about some other things in some of the other bodies that you can incorporate this into. But the thymus tap, if you're just starting to feel overwhelmed, just take some time and it will shift the energy in your body. So those are some things for the physical body. Now we have the emotional body, right? Again, this is what we feel in, right? It's where we store our emotions. And I want to talk about the difference between emotions and feelings. And I think this is really important. And a lot of times we always beat ourselves up for those. And the way that I understand them is our feelings are the automatic things that happen. You're walking in the woods and you come across a really big black bear, right? And all of a sudden your body starts like all this movement starts happening in your body. Your palms are sweating. You're like, oh shit, right? That is a feeling that comes over you of protection. And you're like, oh, gotta run, right? You feel fear, right? And you run. Emotion is more like, oh, I was such an idiot for running when I saw that bear. I should have just been strong, right? The emotion, to me, is like the emotion is what you feel about your feelings. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I've not really ever heard it broken down that way, but yeah, I like it.
Yeah. And so we get really caught up in our emotions. Our emotions are the things that we say about like what's going on, right? And so I'm really happy, right, that I'm, like,
yes, it's the meaning we give it.
Yes. Yeah. So in our emotional body, a couple of things to create some healing. First thing is boundaries.
We can do a whole episode on this, I think.
Oh yeah, for sure. Do you want to talk some about that right now?
Well, I think it's interesting. Yeah, this is something I think I had struggled with a lot. So it really, I think this goes back to, when we were talking about being with your true self. When you can identify that, it does become a little bit easier to hold up the boundaries, because you can honor yourself. That's to me, and I think you probably can explain this a little bit better, but when you can put something in place that honors yourself. So it's not saying yes when you mean no, right? Not sacrificing what you really want. I think in romantic relationships is probably where a lot of us struggle, or family relationships with boundaries, because we want so badly for somebody to love us or for our family to accept us or whatever those things are, that we will sacrifice our own emotional needs just to not lose that love. So it's a tough one. It's a tough one. And I think we all struggle with it. Sometimes we will feel guilty for putting up a boundary. So again, we could dive huge into the whole topic. Yeah.
And I one of my favorite conversations I have with my clients is, when people are like, I'm such a people pleaser and I feel like I need to say yes to everybody, right? And I teach them a way to say yes all the time without hurting, feeling like they're hurting anybody, is they don't have to say no. And they're like, what do you mean I don't have to say no? And like, if somebody asks you to do something and you know that it's not something that you have the ability to do, but you don't want to say no, you just say, I would love to, and I've already said yes to a certain thing. And so when that thing is over and my commitment to that is over, then we can talk. And for right now, I'm going to say yes to what I've already said yes to.
Which could be yourself.
Right. They don't need to know what that other thing is, right?
Yes. But that is one thing I did learn, to say, oh, I've already got a prior commitment. That commitment might be with me and my couch, but you don't need to know that.
Right. But it's literally saying yes to what you've already said yes to. And it really becomes so much easier. So boundaries is a big part of creating a space for healing within our emotional body. And this
I think
next
mantra. Sorry, I want to share just one quick little mantra. And I think, again, we can dive into this one. We'll mark it as something we want to dive deep into. But if I loved myself fully, what would I do? Right? If I completely loved myself here, what would I do? And that can really help you figure out, is that a boundary I need to place?
Right. Yeah. And again, we know that this is really hard because there's so much trapped emotion, so much trauma, right? That's keeping us stuck into our bodies, that we're like, no, I got to say yes to everybody else. But when we release all those things, like, it's so much easier to connect back, to ourselves. Right? Yeah. And I think I told this story in the Heart Wall, but I'll tell it again because it's in our Heart Wall episode. It's so good. Is that I had a client come to me we cleared her heart wall, and she had, before we did that, she'd just gotten out of her second physically abusive relationship. And so when we had our follow-up call after I released the heart wall, and then we talked a couple weeks later, and she was like, I think I built up a whole bunch more hot walls. And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, this guy I was dating, he wanted to do this thing. And I was like, nope, no, that's not working for me. And then at work, something happened, and she was like, no, I'm not accepting that behavior. And she's like, so I think I built up more heart walls. I was like, is it heart walls, or do you think that you're putting up boundaries around things that are not acceptable, like behaviors that aren't acceptable to you? And she was like, that's what this is?
Right? Well, if you've never put them up, you don't know what they are. So and it's a huge one, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So this next one we put under emotional body, but it really falls under all of them. Okay. And this next one is breath work. Okay. And breath work is, to me, like, I feel like everything. If there's one single thing that somebody was like, what can I do to help myself feel better, be happier, have more energy? Like, breath work, 1,000%. That's what I would say, even above the energy work too, right?
Mm-hmm. Doesn't it just make you want to take a deep breath?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it is huge, because most of us breathe very shallow all throughout the day, and we don't even realize it. If you're listening right now, just practice taking a breath so deep that your belly expands and even your low back expands, and you will be like, holy crap, I'm nowhere near using all of my lungs all day long.
Yeah. And I want to see if this quote will fit up on here. Let me post this. Yes. Okay. It's, feelings come and go like clouds in a windy sky. Conscious breathing is my anchor. Okay. And another one is by Dr. Andrew Weil, who's like the OG of holistic health.
Right.
And he says improper breathing is a common cause of ill health. And,
Yep.
ill health in physical, emotional, and mental, right? And so, breath work, when we talk about breath work, it's literally just like conscious breathing. And there's a book that's recently come out that I highly recommend for every single person to read. I keep meaning to send this out to my email list, and I need to get on that. But it's called Breath, The New Science of a Lost Art by James Nestor. I'll put that up on the screen. And this book, because I'd been so like taking breathwork classes, et cetera, like this book was all of the things that was like, yes, like this is why, right? Why it's so super important. And he gives the science behind it. And oh my gosh, it got me back into having a regular breathwork practice. And for me, what that looks like is I have a Dr. Joe Dispenza, like 7-minute audio recording. And it's basically like breathing the air up from a perineum all the way up and then holding it for X amount of time and then exhaling. Do that for about 7 minutes. And then I spend to do about 15 minutes, the next 8 minutes, just breathing in this type that he talks about in this book, which is, he says to breathe in for, they say the ideal is like 5.5 seconds. So I just breathe to like a count into 6 and then exhale at 6. And I just do that for another 8 minutes. And I will say, like, I'm shitting sprinkles when I do that on a daily basis.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I agree with you. It's amazing. And it's so simple. And I will add, I mean, ideally you want to sit in a quiet place and do this, but if you are commuting, I know for a lot of us that's not really a thing, but you can do this while you're driving, you could do it if you have 3 minutes. You don't have to spend 15. Anytime you can find a break, and especially anytime you find yourself feeling a little worked up, if you're stressed about a certain situation, or if you have to go have a really important meeting or an uncomfortable conversation or anything where you need to be grounded and stable, take a few minutes, take some deep breaths, and it will change everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in the book, one of the things that he talks about is mouth breathing versus nose breathing. And I heard of this years ago when I was going to school for health coaching. So I was like, oh, great. I'm glad that people are talk about this again. But there's so many studies on athletes, when they breathe through the nose versus breathing through the mouth and how much more endurance they have. One of the things like, people who have trouble sleeping at night and who wake up feeling exhausted. I mean, there's things like, eating before you go to bedtime, screen time before you go to bed. One of the big culprits is mouth breathing at night. And I've had some of my clients and even my dad, since I read this book, I'm like, you guys got to read this book and you got to tape your mouth at night. And they've been doing it. And they're like, oh my gosh, like I wake up with so much energy. I'm not
literally taping their mouth.
Yes. And so the taping the mouth is literally, it's not.
Oh, I was going to say, I feel like that would make me feel a little bit claustrophobic or something.
Right. So the taping of the mouth, he says, is to imagine Hitler's mustache, right? That size, right? Literally just that size, and just move it down from where the mustache should be down over your mouth. So it's just like the center of your mouth, just a little piece of tape like that. It doesn't have to be a lot. And like and I say everybody, I haven't done it because I know I'm not a mouth breather at night. I know that I always sleep in my mouth. But everybody that I know is like, oh my gosh, such a big difference. And it is, you have to get used to it at first, for sure.
I guess if you're not used to it. Yeah, I can't stand breathing through my mouth. Yeah. Like when I have a cold and I can't breathe through my nose, oh my God, the worst.
Exactly. Yeah. So breathing is everything when it comes to our emotional body. And again, like I said, this one really fits on all of them because it changes your physical body as far as your energy is concerned. It changes your emotional body. It changes your connection because breath is basically spirit. Right? That's like
life force. In yoga, it's prana, it's life force. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's your spiritual body. It calms you down. So it's your mental body. So it is all of those things. So that is huge. So then we have our energetic body. Right? And again, this is our subtle energy flows. When people talk about acupuncture, those kind of things, right? That is our energy body. And this is where the body code and the emotion code come in. Right? And those are basically tools that help to shift basically the clogged traffic, right, in your energy body. Right? It's like there's a traffic jam in your energy body of emotions that just got stuck and lodged in there, and we need to move them out. And the body code basically identifies them and then releases them. It's like that simple.
Yeah, right.
It's that simple. Mm-hmm.
It sounds oversimplified, but yeah. And I think whatever ideology you believe in, they all have some form of this. So.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's kind of more proof that that's a real thing. I think it's sometimes hard for people to get their head around that piece. And if you're averse to calling them chakras or whatever, there's another name for a lot of them, but the chi force and all of these things, but it exists among pretty much every line of thinking.
Yes. Yeah. And I love for those of us like myself who are more like scientifically and like logically, like all this woo-woo stuff. Like I don't know if I ever told you that my first like times going to yoga, when they were like namaste at the end, I was like, oh no, I'm not doing that wacky shit. Like, nope.
Yeah.
And now I get it, right? But the part of me that was like super, super, like afraid of everything, like I can't do that, right? But now I'm like, oh, I get it. But when I started getting involved, like reading in Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, he talks about the energy centers, and the reason why he says they're energy centers is because they literally are. When people talk about chakras, they literally are energy centers in the body. There are endocrine systems, right? They go all the way up: your sexual, digestion, your adrenals. Your heart, your throat, your third eye, they're all scientifically there. So
that's what I love about Dr. Joe, is he does bring the science to it. So for all of our reluctantly woo-woo fans, if you don't follow Dr. Joe Dispenza, get on board, because he could convert you if we can't.
Yeah. And it's just more a matter of like, oh, wait a minute. Okay. Like this stuff does, like, it's there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's real. Yep.
Yeah. So we have our energetic bodies. It's using different things that may sound wacky, right, to help move that subtle energy along. And if you're still like, okay, but this whole energy thing, just think about how you hear a song on the radio, and it's one of your favorite songs, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, you just perk up, or it's like a song that you're like, oh, right? Your energy shifts, and you didn't even have to, inform it to do so.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the next one is our mental body. And this is where, we think, right? What we believe, what we value. Right? And this is all about reprogramming your thought process. When you do energy work with somebody, if you do energy work with somebody, right, that's one piece of the puzzle, and you have to do the work to be able to recondition your mind. And that takes at least 60 days. And so things like, some people like the word affirmations. I prefer positive vibration statement, because when I say something, that's in the positive, but I don't fully believe, my subconscious is like, bullshit, right? So I like to think I'm saying these words that have a positive vibration to them, so that I can make the vibration of my body go up. I can buy that then. Okay? Some people are fine with affirmations, or in the Tony Robbins world, incantations, like all that stuff drives me crazy personally. So positive vibrations works. But I was talking to a client earlier today, and he was saying he's using this app called Think Up. Have you heard of it?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I hadn't either. But so I downloaded it on my phone, and basically it allows you, it gives ideas for affirmations, but it also allows you to create your own, and you can record them, and then it'll go off at whatever time you set it to, right? So that you're reminded of those things. And he was saying about how so his pattern had been in the past, like when something happens and it's discouraging, he'll start going into this downward spiral, right? And then like binge watch stuff on Netflix, etc., right? And it could be like a 2-week period. But it was a one-night experience for him, And I was like, can we just acknowledge that? Because he's like, I'm
Right.
still scrolling. And I'm like, but let's acknowledge that. Like you're shifting out of that so much faster. We've done so much energy work around it.
Mhm.
And he's been doing his affirmations, and he calls them his affirmations every day. He's like, oh, I guess it is making more of a difference than I thought that it was.
Right. Right. And that goes back to when we were talking about it's a journey, and sometimes you got to just celebrate the little wins so that you can see that you are moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why having like a good coach or somebody, to see your patterns and be able to celebrate those with you was really, really helpful. And so I encourage people, like that app I think is great, make a voice recording of you saying stuff and listen to it in the shower since nobody's driving anymore. Like, like listen to it so that you're just hearing these things over and over and over again. And then one of my favorite things when it comes to the mental body and how to shift the mental body into a place of being disempowered to empowered is using the work of Byron Katie. I can't speak enough about her work and how incredibly simple it is and how amazing it is.
Yes, I agree.
Do you want to speak about this?
Yeah, I'd love to. Sure. Yeah. So I think it is super simple, but whenever something comes up, and typically I think I would use it when, something's bothering me, right? Like when you get into that victim mentality and so did this to me and now I feel this way. You ask yourself first, is that true? Is this statement true? What would be a good example of, I don't know, if
they lied to me. Like she lied to me.
Yeah, she lied to me. Exactly. She lied to me and I've been so wrong. Is that true? It could or could not be true, but you may not know. Did that person lie to you? You don't actually know the truth to that. Only the other person knows the truth to that. So you can say, okay, well, where would I be if I didn't believe this thought, right? Or I guess the second question is, what do I feel? What do I experience? How have I come to believe this thought? And then the final question is, where would I be without this thought? So I don't know if I'm getting it exactly right, but it allows you to release your attachment to believing that you were wrong or that person lied, and kind of put some perspective on it. Like, what difference does it actually make? You don't even know if it's true and you're holding on to an attachment about it.
Yeah. And it puts us in a place of observing. And so it's like we're being the watcher of the movie instead of being the main character. And we can like sit back in the theaters and be like, oh, this is what's going on. Right. Then it allows us to disconnect and to see a little bit more instead of being so emotionally entangled into it. And if we're asking these questions, is it true? Is it absolutely true? What do I feel and experience become like when I believe this? And if this thought didn't exist, how would I, feel, behave, and experience life? You can do that, and do that tapping that I just mentioned while you're deep breathing through your nose. Right? All of those things together are going to help to calm your nervous system down. So, last one, we have our spiritual body. And this is our soul, our connection to God, the universe, whichever higher being you want to believe in. So I'm just looking to see if my dog is like, he gets to this. It's his witching hour, so we got to get him out.
I know we're rambling today. Sorry, we're on a long episode.
So he, he's looking at me because, well, that's a long story out. Anyway, our spiritual body, right, is our connection, going back to that whole connection with ourselves, right? But it's our connection to our higher power, right? And so the things that we all know to do to connect to that is a prayer, meditation, and another one is having a community of people with shared beliefs, right? Because when we're isolated and alone, right, it allows us to be isolated and alone and to keep going crazy with those stories that are in our heads. And going back to the food piece too, one of my favorite quotes, and I am all about eating everything healthy and good, right? Except when that is at the expense of like just isolating yourself, right? Then it's not healthy, because we can have the healthiest meal, but if we're feeling lonely, it's not like, it's not healthy for us. And so my favorite quote is, it's better to eat Twinkies with friends than broccoli alone. And there's so much science behind this that we can go off on that. I can go off on that at least, for another thing. But our spiritual connection is our connection to other people as well. So we need to pay attention to all of those. So in just wrapping up, I'm going to share a quick story myself of how all of these things, like how they helped me to heal when I finally realized, oh, wait a minute, I have to pay attention to all these things. A couple of years ago, we had ended this on-off relationship that I was so wrapped up in and just devastated when we broke up. And I was eating well, taking care of myself. Okay? I was doing a lot of deep dive plant medicine, meditation, breathing, like stuff that a lot of people are like, wouldn't even want to do. But I'm like, I'm going to do these heals things. I really want to heal, right? I'm saying my affirmations, right? I'm connecting to my spirit. And I just kept swirling and swirling and swirling for months. Well, I was taking care of my physical body, my emotional body, my energetic body, my spiritual body. Okay? But the one thing that I was doing was I was Facebook stalking. And that was effing up my mental and emotional, right? But it just kept me swirling in all of these thoughts. And I finally got to the point where I was like, I'm preventing my own healing. I'm preventing my own growth by like creating these stories about stuff that I'm seeing on his Facebook page. And so I blocked, him on my Facebook page so that I couldn't go and see him. Right. I mean, I could, but I have to wait 48 hours. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm psycho. Right.
Yeah.
So that is how this plays in. Like, we have to look at all of those areas. And if we're not touching on all of these areas, right, that like, if we're wondering, why am I still stuck in these patterns? We have to look and say, which area, which body needs my attention that hasn't been getting my attention. Does that make sense? Yeah,
it does. Yeah.
When you think about these areas, can you think of a time in your life where you stopped your own healing because you weren't paying attention to one of these areas?
I can't think of necessarily something that I would say stopped. I think I've always been relatively aware, but ebbed and flowed. I think where I could say I really hit a level up was, well, I mean, we've shared a little bit about how we even connected, was in a bit of a rock bottom for me. I had to reconnect with the spiritual body in a different way, to really, for me, own that it wasn't a piece that was wholly missing, but it was a piece that, again, it does lend itself well to this reluctantly woo-woo idea, because for some reason I carried shame about my spirituality. I thought that made me weird, or, I would be involved with people that had different beliefs. And so I didn't want to talk about mine for fear of being judged. And so really owning that and connecting with it very, very deeply has taken my life, and continues to. I mean, I find new ways all the time to take that to a different level that really does seem to make a difference for me. The rest of it at this point in my life comes rather naturally. I notice when I get a little out of sync with food in particular, that's one that I'm always kind of tweaking recently, noticing where my diet needs to shift so that I can feel more optimal, right? It becomes, once you've been in this journey, it's fine-tuned tweaking, and that gets really fun, actually. So finding those little pieces, like you said, where I'm doing pretty well here, but I'd like to level up a little bit more. So where could I do better?
Yeah. Yeah. So for anybody like watching, listening, I want you to just ask yourself, like, what of these 5 bodies, right? What needs some more attention from me? What are the areas that I haven't been paying attention to that may be part of what's stopping me from moving forward? Right? Is it something in your physical body, your emotional, your energetic, your mental, and your spiritual? We gave you some examples of things to do in each of those, but it is going to shift. Like I said, my example with not being able to get over my ex, despite all of the deep things that I was doing, right? Like Facebook stalking was a mental thing, right, that I needed to stop doing. But that was case sensitive, to my thing. So ask for your particular case. Right? Do you need to pay more attention to the physical, to emotional, to the energetic, to the mental, to the spiritual? And then when you do those, say, okay, what things haven't I tried yet? What things are out of the box, things that I might not believe in, but I hear people talking about that I could try so that I can experience some healing. So with that, we're going to wrap up. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And we will see you on the next episode.
Right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.